Hey everybody, Dustin DePirac here, calling the Standy Graham. Mike Miller,
Yep.
still rocking the stash in the back.
Not for much longer.
Not for much longer. Are you cutting it off after November, or are you sticking through the month?
It might not last the night.
Okay, probably a good decision. Anyway, we were coming here from Memorial Stadium. It is still really nice out, but it was a rough day for Indiana at their home park today. 62-14 final. Wisconsin wins. They clinch the leaders division. They don't clinch the division, but they clinch the berth into the Big Ten title game. Indiana has 2 games to go, and they have to win both of them to get into a bowl game. And obviously, big news today: 564 rushing yards for Wisconsin. 564 on
Yeah.
64 carries. It was rough.
That's the big
Andy,
number.
go ahead. Take it
Well,
away.
Here's another big number for you: 204-41. That's what Wisconsin has beaten Indiana by cumulatively in the last 3 years.
We've seen all those. It's been rough.
We've witnessed all of them. And here's the thing: I mean, this was a game where Indiana football finally had a few more people paying attention, a few more people saying, "Hey, maybe we ought to check them out." Well, it was the worst possible day to play the worst game of the season, but that's what they did. And
Yeah.
they were bad in every facet. They were bad right away. They pretty much stayed bad. They had a brief moment of potential competitiveness in the second quarter where all of a sudden the offense finally had a pulse, scored a touchdown, mostly because of 2 great catches, one really great catch by
Teddy
Ted
Bolzer.
the tight end. Because Kaufman was off target all day, and
He was.
But anyhow, Ted made a great one-handed running snag to get that drive going. Anyhow, they finally have a pulse, and then the play that really just absolutely ended the game was Wisconsin basically running the clock out at the end of the first half. It's 3rd and 16. It's a straight handoff, and it goes for a touchdown. And I'm not sure what happened on the play. It looked like some of the Indiana linebackers just buried themselves in the scrum. Nobody got off the block. And what was the yardage on that? I forget. 69 yards. And it's just something that can't
James
happen.
White.
It cannot happen with 13 seconds left in a half. But it did. And after that, I mean, Indiana, goes into the locker room, and they're thoroughly deflated and came out the second half and played like it. First drive of the second half, Wisconsin has the ball and just runs it right down Indiana throat. And more than any other thing that would be depressing to Indiana and its fans today was the fact that all Indiana's defense had to do, the only job it had to do today was to stop the run, or at least slow down the run, or at least contain the run sometimes, and they were unable to do that, even by loading up the box, and they just got physically manhandled and whooped and bullied, and that's something that I don't think I expected to see that today. I thought I could well see a Wisconsin win, certainly. I did not expect to see what I saw today, which was basically, it looked like to me, Indiana's guys who have played hard and competitively all year hoisted the white flag today, and I didn't think I would see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always kind of tough to put that, to hang that on somebody, but it's very clear that they didn't do a lot of the things that even I expected them to do. And it really just seemed like they were kept off balance from the very beginning. The one thing that Indiana has done, I wouldn't say the one thing that Indiana has done, one thing that Indiana has done really well defensively this year is defend teams that are sort of tailback oriented. When it's come to teams that have a really good quarterback running game, they've had
Right.
a tough time getting any of that done. But they've usually been able to get a good push up the middle and therefore make it hard for teams that are just going to do straight handoffs to get anything accomplished. There's usually some penetration, and they have to dodge some things early on, and that makes it tough to get a decent run going. Wisconsin was able to get out on the edge, even just with handoffs for the most part. But they did a lot, got to give credit to Matt Canada today. I mean, a lot. And people thought I was joking with this, but Matt Canada really put together a impressive just play calling scheme, just scripted, whatever. But I mean,
It was mostly runs, but they were inventive runs a lot of the time.
yeah, I mean, and I think kind of one of the big things that knocked them on their toes, they had a reverse early, and it just seemed like from that point Indiana was just like, wait, what are you doing here? And Kurt Phillips, I think, Kevin Wilson didn't really say much about Kurt Phillips, but I thought his athleticism made a huge deal. I mean, I think they had a 3rd and 8 early in the game. I think on the first drive where they could have been 3 and out, and Phillips pretty much got that one on his own. Dropped back, didn't see anything, and just sprinted for it. And it was just a general game plan that kept Indiana offsides all day.
Well,
Mike, you did a story on on the run game. Basically, just what did you get out of those guys just over in Wisconsin? Just what did they say about just what they were trying to do and what they accomplished?
Well, the one thing Bielema credited Canada with was just making plays look like something that they weren't, and all the motion and running. They could set up in the same formation and run two different plays, but it was the same formation that looked like the play they had just run. So really, that's sort of like you said, the inventiveness and then just switching things up. That really worked. And like you mentioned, the running game, they really just ate up the front four for Indiana, running stretching into the sides, and Indiana had just really no answer.
No,
it wasn't even. It was the front four partially. I agree, especially the defensive ends, but the linebackers didn't get there. The cornerbacks didn't get there. I mean, it was look. When I say they ran up the white flag, I mean that sounds worse than I meant it to sound. Probably, I think guys are trying, and after a while though, with that much time on the field, and you just get brutalized after a while.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're still trying, but it just ain't happening.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with desire. Really. It just has to do with not being able to play in a way that is dominating the opposition, and you're getting dominated. And then sometimes it just happens. I mean, it happens to even fair to average teams. And Kevin Wilson kind of tried to warn everybody all week. He said, "Look, this is an average team that's getting better every day, trying to get better."
Yeah.
And the reason why, this game really isn't that big a game. If it was, it wouldn't be a noon kickoff. I mean, he was trying to downplay it, but I mean, the actual fact of the matter is that this game, more than any other game this year, I think, was one that Indiana should have been primed for, emotionally really ready to go, come out sharp, come out clicking, and they just didn't in any facet of the game.
No. I mean, even the big thing is going to be defensively. Everyone's going to point to that because of just the yardage that was put up. But even on the offensive side of the ball, Cam Kaufman had a really, really rough day. Just seemed to be sailing everything. I mean, just everything he threw just seemed to be off. And it's like like a shooter that can't hit one, and that's kind of how Cam was today. But and the thing was, Nate Sudfeld came in, and Nate Sudfeld fumbled a snap. Yeah. When it really comes down to it, the one thing that you cannot do if you play for Kevin Wilson is fumble.
Turn the ball
That
over.
is the one thing. I mean, you could throw a pick before you could fumble. If you throw an interception, if you saw something wrong, maybe there's something they can justify, especially when it comes to a quarterback. If you fumble a snap, you're done.
But you're right about
and that's a Wilson thing. You can argue and say he's wrong, but that's when it's a running back and you fumble, you're out. Maybe you come back later, but you're out.
You're right about the quarterback play too. In this sense, early, and I know this seems kind of an obscure point to make now, but Indiana's first three possessions, I think, on third down, they had a guy open every time.
Yeah,
and the pass. I mean, they made a couple of first downs, but to keep the drive going, they had to convert another third down, and guys were open. They just didn't, the ball didn't get there for whatever reason. And whether it was a route issue or a timing issue or just a bad throw, I mean, Cam was sailing his passes quite a bit today, throwing high or throwing long. He woefully underthrew what could have been a touchdown late for an interception. I mean, just did not have a good day. Sudfeld came in and was poor. I mean, there was poor, Kevin Wilson has also said this many times. We have to get outstanding quarterback play, not just
not just average, adequate.
It has to be good. Today it was poor, and we saw what that resulted in.
Yeah, no, and it was bad across the board. There was a bunch of receiver drops. I mean, really, the only guy who had a moment that you could say, wow, that's a good stretch was Teddy Bolser on the two catches he made. Those were outstanding, honestly. But yeah, you mentioned earlier about Kevin trying not to make it too big of a game or trying to downplay it. The one thing that Indiana was in a tough position for, and there's no excuses. It's like play football, obviously, to a degree. But I think Wilson knew that this was not necessarily, that all of a sudden there was this notion that this team was kind of a ready for primetime team. And, I don't know that he ever wanted to pitch it that way because obviously this would not have been a big game if not for some pretty extreme circumstances in State College, PA, and Columbus, Ohio.
That's exactly
if not for some really crazy stuff. This game is between the third and fourth place team in the Big Ten Leaders Division, and it's really for a second or third tier bowl game. And then all of a sudden, really, all Indiana had to do to get here to make this be a big game was beat Iowa and Illinois, neither of which are apparently good teams, particularly.
Yeah, Iowa lost to Purdue at home today.
Yeah, and that being said, I think Wilson will continue to kind of pitch this as this goes forward in his own way, not in the way I'm going to put it. But they didn't have to win this game to say they accomplished something today. Or not today, I mean, to say they accomplished something this year. All of a sudden, this became sort of the centerpiece game of the season, and it had to be, and it made sense, and all those kind of things, because all of a sudden it did matter, and everybody was watching. But, this team has 4 wins. It had 1 a year ago. It's got at least 1 on the schedule that's very winnable, and another that you never know. So there's going to be a lot of people who look to bury this team all of a sudden because it came out in this game and got hammered. And really, the fact of the matter is it just shouldn't really have been in this position to begin with. And in normal circumstances, this would have been a game that everybody came into looking and said, wow, they're going to get beat there, but, they'll move on. So, I mean, I thought they should have been more competitive today for sure, but...
I'd feel a little bit differently about it if Russell Wilson was still quarterbacking.
That's true, too.
This was not a Wisconsin team.
It was not a great Wisconsin team.
Not like we've seen in the last couple of years. And to give up 62 and to not be able to ever stop the run, except, on periodic instances, but not to have any consistency in stopping the run. When you can load up the box. You can. Then they don't want to throw. And
That's true.
And to be gouged the way they were today, that's not, I think, explainable or excusable.
No, it's not.
It's not.
But anyway, that's it. Thanks, guys.
That's it.